On the final day of her summer holiday, Emily heard that she would be moving, and everything thereafter became a blur. It wasn't up for discussion, and a week later Emily was standing in front of Ravenswood High School. Eat your heart out if you were trying to be dark and gothic, because the crumbled ceiling tiles on its aged walls looked like they'd been borrowed from a horror movie set. The school was silhouetted against the gray clouds, towering, its broken and boarded windows seeing her sly footfalls in between shadows. Emily was not happy to be starting her junior year in a new school, and lightning did strike twice. That the dark castle she had seen when they drove up belonged to it. A shiver ran down her spine as she entered through the rusting iron gates, though it was an early August morning and not even close to cold. Her mother had warned her that Ravenswood was a very old town with an extensive history. What she failed to mention, however, is the fact that no matter how many new buildings were added on, the actual school itself always felt like something of a relic from some sort of secret and distant era. School on day one was uneventful, consisting mainly of the standard fare of meeting new faces and awkward goodbyes. Sarah was to be her guide for the week. Emily wasted no time in making friends with a girl named Sarah. Sarah was bright and bubbly, a much-needed antidote to the somber feel of that place. As they passed through the unlit hallways, Sarah walked Emily up to date with a brief lesson of what went on. Ravenswood High is over 100 years old, she said. It was built as an asylum before it became a boarding school. There are whispers that it is haunted. Emily chuckled nervously. Haunted? Really? Sarah gave it a solemn nod. Oh, that there are stories aplenty. We had claims of strange noises, ghost sightings, students vanishing. Emily's curiosity was piqued. Disappearing? That sounds a little too much like the movies. With a shrug, Sarah said, maybe. Though the most recent vanishment was in '92. A girl named Lisa. She soon disappeared without a word. As Emily lay in bed that night, she could not shake the feeling of disquiet reflecting upon what Sarah had told her. So, she took it upon herself to learn more about Ravenswood High and its haunted past. In researching further, she uncovered a slew of hair-raising occurrences spanning decades at the school, with students and teachers vanishing, weird accidents and spooky sightings by numerous witnesses. A single name always cropped up in her searches: Headmistress Blackwood. The folklore said Headmistress Blackwood used to be in charge of the asylum before being converted into a school. She was mostly remembered for her harsh and inhumane treatment of the patients, which resulted in the death of more than one patient. Her spirit, it was said, still haunted the halls, seeking revenge on anyone who dared to enter her realm. Emily, who fucking knew she was being washed by Sarah from the get-go, pumped her for info and proposed they break in to check out after hours. At first, Sarah was skeptical, but then she changed her mind because of curiosity. Versatile. The next Friday night, armed with flashlights and their phones, Emily was smuggled into the school through a busted basement window by Sarah. The air inside was laden with dust and the smell of mildew. Their footfalls reverberated ominously through the barren halls. They began in the basement, where there was room for what had been a morgue. The room was drafty, and it smelled of urine and mold. Old rusted gurneys were piled with duct-taped medical equipment. She shivered at the thought of what hell lay beyond those doors. While the children made their way, they heard strange noises in the air, whispers right by them, footsteps on forest leaves, and an eerie woman's voice singing softly what seemed to be a little song. Excitement zipped through Emily as they tracked down the noise all the way to a locked door that lay at the end of a corridor. Sarah plucked a bobby pin from her hair and deftly manipulated the lock open. The door creaked open and walked in the room, now filled with old dusty books and pictures. A large, antique mirror with a cracked and tarnished surface stood in the center of the room. At the mirror, Emily felt a strange compulsion. The room shivered around her as she gazed into its depths. Her reflection in the glass warped, revealing an image of years past. A young woman no more than 15 being escorted down one of the unending halls by cold-looking women dressed to resemble Mrs. Blackwood, Headmistress Solara Blackwood, who was then just senior guardian Silsel Dallas Hernanal. Suddenly, the camera panned, showing her in a dark little room crying out for help, with the headmistress' cold laugh resounding around. Her eyes worked blurry for half a heartbeat until the vision evaporated, to be replaced at once by her own scared face and reaching hand. "Get us out of here," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. But when they went to exit, the door shut and locked them in. They pounded on the door and instant panic set in, but it would not move. The air in the room grew colder, with some whispers growing louder and invading their ears, but no words were understandable. Then, the mirror started to light up, filling the room with an eerie glowing. As Emily and Sarah stared in terror, a figure stepped out from the mirror, an elongated dark shadow of a woman with glaring eyes, as well as an obtuse grin on her face. Headmistress Blackwood, apparition spat, her voice a cacophony akin to that of chalk on nails. "You never should have come back this way. This is my place, and you are going to do like the rest." The wall seemed to coming towards them as the headmistress came forward, and she flickered like a candle flame. Emily and Sarah had both been scared to death in their corner. The door burst open, and a blinding light filled the room as the headmistress reached out to touch them. The room swam in Emily's vision, and she half felt herself being pulled back by something unseen. She looked up and saw Sarah kneeling over her on the main hallway of the school. The cold air had been replaced by the warm, stale stink of old building. The door to the basement was open wide, and there was no sign of Headmistress Blackwood. "Emily, Sarah, are you okay?" a voice called out. They are just leaning the meat out of sight when they hear a voice from above, and look up to see Mr. Thompson, the Countess's janitor servant master. His concern was written all across his face as he lifted them up off the ground. We're okay," Emily stumbled, still in confusion of what just happened to her. Mr. Thompson looked very serious and told us, "You girls aren't supposed to be here after hours. It's not safe here at all, especially in the night." Emily knew that she was not alone. Something watched as they walked out the school gates. She looked over her shoulder at the old building, its dark windows a mirror for the pale imitation of moonlight that filtered through. Headmistress Blackwood had not been defeated entirely, however. Her spirit resided in a lingering state of terror. In the weeks that came, Emily and Sarah did detective work together as if it was easy, though they were perilously tied to figuring out what Ravenswood High School held the next disappearance of students who had received accolades for being successful ghosts. Only later did they realize that every ounce of the spirit available to them was rooted in a curse more powerful than any wizard at Brackengill, one which required unearthing her skeletons for all and sundry to see. Old documents and the tales of alumni helped to create a picture of that terrible history, from both an asylum standpoint, as well as Headmistress Blackwood's own nightmarish procedures. That the headmistress had gone mad with her fascination in all things occult, and was performing these dark rituals which were driven by an overwhelming compulsion to achieve eternal life. And Emily and Sarah figured out that the mirror was a key to breaking this curse they found in basement. This time, they went back to the school with a purpose, with the book of ancient spells clutched in her hand, and a resolve to finally rid herself of this ghost. She decided it was time to take matters into their own hands. Standing in front of the mirror, they repeated a spell that had been handed down with their family for generations, calling on the souls long since departed to finally end this curse. The mirror glowed again, but this time the face inside was an enraged Headmistress Blackwood. "Thou shalt not conquer me," she growled, her voice bouncing around off the walls. "Never, never, ever leaving this place." The girls finished their chant, and the glow from the mirror grew brighter, growing in strength as it started to distort her very figure. The spirit of Headmistress Blackwood screamed one last time as she was sucked into the mirror, her twisted face a picture of rage and terror. The room quieted and the mirror exploded into a million shards across its flooring. It was as if an atmosphere oppressive in itself had left me in. Instead of that, peace, rest. Emily and Sarah could taste success. That night he broke the curse in photograph 4, and then all of souls at Ravenswood High were set free from their misery. Since then, the school changed completely in weeks. The original, dilapidated structure was restored and the dark past of the asylum recognized. Ravenswood started to pick up the pieces, and Emily and Sarah were hailed heroes around town for being so brave. Although life moved on, Emily was never able to forget the gruesome horror she had seen. The past, she knew, could never really be evaporated completely, and the specter of Ravenswood High would linger always as a haunting monument to its former darkness. But she also knew that change had spread, and the spirits of old could move on at last. That was enough for Emily.